pretty excited to be here today, and I'm sure you've had an amazing experience and lots of great conversations that you have all participated in, even though it went dark and I can't see each and every one of your faces. But I'm happy to tell you that this conversation is going to be quite different, because we are all rule breakers in our own way, and that's why this is about how do you truly transform culture. And I think the only way to transform culture is to break some rules every once in a while. So are we ready to talk about breaking some rules?
Absolutely.
Coloring out of the lines a little bit?
It's all we know how to do.
Okay, you had me at hello. I'm pretty excited. So if we could each introduce ourselves, tell me who you are, what you do, and I will break script instantaneously and say, especially as women, and let's see how our male conversationalist does. We often don't like to brag about ourselves, but in our Quality Lounge, we've been talking about being remarkable. If you could each tell me what makes you remarkable.
Sure.
How about that?
All right, so I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Sherice Torres. I'm a marketing director at Google. And what makes me remarkable is I am a thermostat in a room full of thermometers. What do I mean by that? I think so often you can go into an environment, be it a meeting, an organization, whatever it might be, and you can choose to follow the tone that's in the room, or you can set the tone. And I think when we talk about changing workplace culture, that's so critically important, rather than just going with this is how we do things here, to learn how to be that thermometer, to set the tone and the temperature in the room.
I love that.
Lovely
Good one.
analogy.
The thermometer. That's good.
Good afternoon. Truly delighted to be here. My name is Janet Foutty. I'm the CEO and chair of Deloitte Consulting. Shelley knows that she's putting us on the spot because she knows this is not our favorite topic. What makes me remarkable is two things. One is I'm an amazing mother. And the second is that I'm exceptional at building teams of broad groups of people who come from very different places and helping them get to a common place.
Amazing.
Very nice. So I'm Susie Wee. I'm the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of DevNet at Cisco Systems. I founded our DevNet program there. Superpower, let's see. So I'm a tech geek. So I have my PhD from MIT in electrical engineering and computer science.
Just saying.
But, sorry.
Slacker.
But I care about people and teams. And so really I care about team building, and it's really not about what I do, but it's about what we can do collectively, and bringing out the best in everybody is really what creates awesome results.
Awesome.
I'm Nina Harding, and I have the privilege to lead our partner ecosystem programs and strategy at Google. It's an honor to work with all of our partners and talk about diversity and bringing everyone's skill set together in an amazing way. What makes me,
Remarkable.
Remarkable. When I see the word impossible, all I see is possible. I absolutely believe that there is nothing in this world that is impossible. You just have to find a way to conquer it, look around it, take a different perspective, listen, and you can make anything possible.
Nice. Awesome.
So I'm Trent Lund from PwC. I look after our ventures business in Australia. So I get to build new businesses with technology and fabulous people like Google, so that's exciting for me. Believe it or not, this is a harder thing to answer because I had to workshop it inside and get help from Nina. So
It's rare to hear a man say he can't boast about himself.
There you go, collaborating.
I like this.
So,
Talk about flipping the script here.
Yeah. So look, how am I remarkable? So I think we landed on, and so I'm a translator. I think my skill is getting different people who really just don't see the same vision or the same thought process together and bridge that gap. That's what I feel comfortable sort of hearing. I can hear it at one language, even though they feel like they're talking in two different languages. That's something that I use regularly.
Nice.
You know, I think what is remarkable about each of your strengths is they're all soft power. We just did a study with Deloitte, really outlining the best qualities of leadership today are soft powers: nurturing, empathy, contextualization, conversation, really bringing that passion to the table and bringing unity and togetherness. So I found it very interesting that your unique strengths are actually the best qualities of leadership today. So thank you for sharing that. As hard as it was, it's very important, because what makes a team is the individual strengths and working together for magic to happen. So I want to go back, Trent, to you of being a translator. Give us an example of how you have used your translating powers to bring inclusivity into your organization.
Sure. So we've been on a massive journey in PwC, particularly trying to correct the ship, I'd say, correct course. We are professional services, a very male-dominated industry, and we've kind of peaked our understanding, but we're still on an early stage of that journey. And I'm finding the brokering of conversations where, use an example, I had, an older, far more capable member in one of the groups, and a young, inspiring, young lady, and they are just not talking in the same language with each other. And if I stand back from it, at first it feels like actually they're both a little bit right and they're both a little bit wrong. But then I've sort of got to check myself on my biases of why I'm thinking that and why is that. And so I think that translation ability is you have to confront and have the conversations and bring them together, because neither will learn at all. And it's important to have the conversation, whether, for the young lady in this example, it's important for her to be part of the conversation, to build that strength that actually, this is something that is important and is valued. And saying, I wouldn't want to be robbed of a lesson that's going to make me better as a leader. I wouldn't want people, thinking that I'm not up to the task and I'm not moving forward. I'd want that opportunity to get my lesson and evolve.
Do you feel that you're more sensitive to being conscious of your bias now than you were a few years ago? Or have you always been this caring, sensitive guy?
My wife has shaped me up a little bit here, right? I can't take the credit. The reality is I wouldn't hire my 10-year-ago self, okay? And my 10-year-ago self, I was really proud of myself, and I thought I was really open. I was the sort of person who was a good team leader, and I got great feedback, and I felt that I had equality in my mindset in all the things I did. But I look back now with the things I've learned, and I had incredible biases. There were things which I took for granted that were normal conversation that just were not fair. But 10 years ago, I was probably on a high bar. So, now where I am now, if I wouldn't hire that person, you kind of think, well, what am I thinking in 10 years' time? Right?
I love that. And, for everyone here, we're going to do a few questions. So start thinking of some really good ones, because I have a lot to go with based on what you just said about your 10-year, yourself 10 years ago. So if we have time, we'll come back unless someone asks that. This is an interactive conversation. Nina, I want to go to you about imagining the possibilities. Anything is possible if you believe you can do it. Where does that come from?
It comes from a few places. You guys all saw me walk out on stage, and 2008, I woke up one morning and I found myself paralyzed from T2 down. And I was in the hospital in ICU for 2.5 weeks. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I was like an episode of House, if anyone's familiar with that. And I was released from the hospital being told that I'd never walk again. Well, that was not how I was going to live my life. So when you're told something by some of the best physicians, the head of neurology at Stanford Hospital, and they tell you, readjust your life, your expectations, get bars set up, you might need to move, all these kinds of things, I did not want that. So how do you conquer that? How do you change that? So I had to open up my vantage, my perspective, And I started trying Eastern medicine. I started talking to other people that had been quadriplegic and had made it through. And I learned very quickly that I couldn't do it alone. I had been really strong in my career. I felt like I could conquer anything, but this really changed the scope. And very quickly, I learned that by bringing other people in and seeking their advice, being open to what other people had to say, learning from people from all walks of life, that all of a sudden I found a path. And one day, 6 months into it, I could wiggle a toe. And that little toe was my inspiration, and gosh darn it, nothing was impossible anymore. So the world has been possible since then. And there's nothing that I am not afraid of anymore. I mean, I'm willing to take on anything. My team's willing to take it on with me. We're willing to take on the marketplace. We're so excited about what's out there and what's possible. So that's where it comes from. And it's now part of my inner core of every day that I live.
Oh my God.
I mean, sorry. You get a big hug for that. But I think the most amazing thing, I'm walking backwards.
Careful.
Yeah, I know. About that is it's hope. And, you know, it gives us all that power to realize we can do whatever we can imagine on some level if we have hope. And I heard something recently, you know, sometimes we focus on the negative, and negativity just begets negativity. But positivity really breeds, you know, positivity, and things can happen and change if we believe they can. So your story is incredible, and I want to come back and ask you how you're bringing that into what you do today, from how you felt before, and are you more sensitized? And I think that brings me really to you, Susie. There are so few women. You're a tech geek from MIT. Which is amazing. I'll tell you what really pissed me off. I was on tour. It did. I didn't use the F word, but I can say pissed off, I think. I was on tour with vets, and we brought young girls in STEM, and we were making prosthetic arms and legs, because utility for men and women obviously is the same, but cosmetic is utility for women. They suffer severe depression. And while we were on tour, a Nobel laureate said that women and men should not work in a lab together because they were #distractingly sexy. And these young girls, I mean, imagine what they were thinking. So we came back right away and created a campaign called #distractingly smart.
Nice.
So you are #distractingly smart. Like, how do we get more women in technology? I mean, here we have so few women in STEM and going into it. You know, how are you working on getting more women into the tech field?
Well, I think, so I'm very fortunate. I have a small daughter, 3.5 years old, and I had her at a very late age, so she's kind of a miracle child. But, you know, the thing is, like, when you look at a child and kids, they love to create. They love to build. Like, there's no limits, you know, get Legos, get tiles, like, build, build, build. And somewhere people lose that, right? But if you think about it, it's innate to everybody to create new things and to build new things. So it's really just about, you know, going on and just keeping the fun in creating and letting everybody know that you can still create. So if we kind of take that to where we are today, you know, my team is amazing, and everybody creates, everybody builds. And, you know, any job that you have, you know, whether you're doing QA or development or marketing, any job you have, you're creating in what you do every day. And just letting people know that, you know, their opinion, what they want to build, what they want to create, let them innovate. That's what creates the strongest output and the strongest team possible. So just, you know, just allowing that invention and innovation to shine through and letting everyone know that what they build and what they create matters is key.
I think it's amazing. And, you know, confidence starts at the age of 5. So, you know, with your daughter at the age of 3, starting to gain that confidence in creating and building, and I think is really inspiring. We have a problem in high school because I heard that STEM programs are elective, and so there's more, you know, boys in STEM than girls, and it's slightly intimidating. What advice do you give to young girls at a young age to say, don't worry about being, you know, one of few in the classroom, push push forward?
No, it's just to like let people know that what you're building is amazing. I mean, I met some young girls who were developing games. Like they were building games, and then one girl, she built a game about fashion, you know? So she was like, I have this idea for a game. What's your idea? She was just like, well, you can take people, build them, and then have them, you know, like they would start collecting things so that they could build beautiful things, right? And that was her idea. It's just like, you go with that. And every tool that you need these days is right in front of you. It's a computer, right? Everything's on the internet. So just the fact that everything is accessible is pretty remarkable.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then Janet, I mean, you know, we've spent a lot of time together at the World Economic Forum and got to know each other, and you talked about your strength being a team builder. I did watch that in action and experience that, bringing, you know, different members of your team together to create this power of collaboration. What have you found to be, you know, the greatest strength? I mean, do you see diversity as good for business in action? We talk about diversity, we talk about inclusivity. More importantly, I think what you create is a culture of belonging, you know, with your employees.
Yeah, so I think it's fairly well understood at this point from lots of research that teams that have more diverse people around the table come up with better answers. And I think that's the wonderful thing is we now understand that. I think the challenge is what do we do about it? I think the most interesting thing, and I was really reflecting on your commentary around your 10-year-ago self, and I thought I was, evolved as a leader on many dimensions and have invested a lot in women in STEM and in and around lots of different topics. But the conversation continues to evolve when you think about diversity of thinking, because it is both diversity of gender and race and sexual orientation and religion, but it's also your socioeconomic upbringing, it's age, the variety of things that I think we have to open our eyes to in the conversation is something that I continue to work on each and every day, because I will tell you that I come with my own biases, as we all do, in and around some dimensions of all those things. So, a lot of it for me in my own personal journey, which I'm now trying to help through our organization, is one of actually understanding that it is good for the organization, good for me, and the right thing to do. And that confluence of things is very, very powerful. There is zero chance I would be sitting here in front of you all today engaging in this amazing conversation if I did not have the ability to build really diverse and really thoughtful teams that brought very different things to the table, people a lot smarter than me with a lot of different experiences and perspectives. And so what I'm really working on in our organization is how to create that sense of it's good for the organization, good for you, because the pay it forward comes in spades, and also the right thing to do. So those are some of the dimensions of what I'm trying to push myself and the organization around.
That's amazing. So Sherice, we talked about you being the thermometer. So
Thermostat. Thermometers read the room. Thermostat sets the temperature.
Oh, thermostat.
It's a whole new analogy. I'm like, you're pushing
I'm kind
us.
of obsessed with that.
Yeah.
It's really good. Yeah. Thermostat. So you're the thermostat. Sounds better too than a thermometer. How have you, what experiences in your career and in your workplace have you been able to use that in a very productive, transformative way?
Yeah, so I would say, similar to some things that Trent said, a power that I have and I think is really critical in the workplace today is to really understand competing objectives in any given room. And when you have conflict anywhere, but at work in particular, it's usually because people aren't reading each other. At the end of the day, we all typically want the same thing. We want to grow our business. We want to meet our users' needs. We want to advance our careers and our organization's objectives. But we all come with our own baggage and history and maybe hidden agendas behind that. So by trying to set the tone of the room, I really pride myself on understanding what are the backstories of the people in the room, both personally and professionally, so I can help be that mediator to get us all to the end goal. Because at the end of the day, really, in any business, you want the same thing. It's just kind of getting out of your own way and helping the others around the table get out of the way so that you can reach that end goal.
How do you do that? Do you ask questions before you start a meeting? Do you level set? Do you say, we're going to have an open, unplugged conversation and we're all going to listen to one another? Do you have an interruption bell at the table? Like, how do you do that?
So an easy answer would be all of the above, but I
You have an
believe,
interruption bell?
I
love
do
the
not have an
idea, by the
interruption
way.
bell, but I can tell a story around that. But I believe in the power of the pre-meeting. You know, big decisions are never made in a large room. There's too many egos, too many competing objectives, so you kind of go around and understand where are you coming from, what's holding you back from this idea, how can I get you on board, or what are your concerns? So having those key stakeholders feel like they have a role, the idea, the final direction was kind of their idea, or that their ideas, their objections, their concerns were addressed in advance, really helps that. Yes, you can say this is an open conversation, we can all contribute, but let's be really real. When you have lots of people around the table, different levels, different objectives, no one is truly coming with their full authentic self. So you have to have that pre-meeting so that they feel you have their back.
I think that's
So
amazing.
Can I just add on a little bit to
Always.
that? So as a consultant by nature, a lot of what we do in professional services is help our clients come to a common place of understanding. So that's sort of in my DNA.
But you're a fun consultant, like an oxymoron. You actually break the rules.
Exactly. That is true too. That is true too, as you well know.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what I grew up doing professionally. But for me, what I found when I was working within my own organization and leading teams of trying to solve our issues as well is how to make sure I had that same sort of outside-in mindset. And I did a little exercise with my team literally yesterday, which is so apropos to what you're talking about. So I have a new leadership team. About half the table is new and half has been with me for a while. And this was our second big meeting. And I told them in advance we were going to do this, so I didn't surprise them, but I asked each of them to come with 2 things that they wanted the table's help in accomplishing over the next year. And one needed to be something for their practice area or their area of professional responsibility, and one was personal, and in terms of their own personal growth and development. And it was a little bit of a gamble, but I was trying to get at just that, is understanding and having everyone in the room understand what things are important to you in almost a more formal way than I normally would have done to try to break some glass in that conversation. People were, for the most part, way more open than I would have hoped for. Now, I set the tone of a pretty open table, but to your point, different levels, different constructs. So that's something I've been.
We might have to play that game here.
That would be fun, actually.
Oh, okay. Hold that thought. Coming back to playing that game. I think that's going to be a fun game. Can I play with that game too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Bring it on.
The moderator's allowed to play in the game?
There you go.
Okay, good. I want to play in that game. I love that. I think it's a really big idea. Let's go to what rule? You know, I have a nickname called Chief Troublemaker, mainly because I break the rules that make no sense. I think the rules were written over 100 years ago by men for men when women just weren't in the workplace, and we're now just catching up. So if you could break a rule about the workplace today, what would that be? Any order. Jump in.
I can jump in on that. I think the biggest rule I would break is feeling that you have to be one person at home and a different person at work. You know, coming up when I actually grew up in consulting. I was talking with Janet earlier, came up Deloitte in San Francisco, so a lot of my thinking comes from that foundation. Not the bad part, just the good part. But it is, figured I should correct that one.
All in the family here.
Exactly, but it is, I really felt early in my career that I needed to have a persona or a mask that I wore coming in. And I got feedback as I became more of a senior leader. I got feedback that people don't completely trust you because they feel like they don't know you. And that was frustrating and eye-opening for me all at the same time, because I was very much raised to say, you know, you come with your best, your P's and Q's, you know, your I's dotted, your T's crossed when you come to work, but people want to have a better understanding of who you are as a human, what your vulnerabilities are, when you've made mistakes. So I actually have changed things in my team, and we have a meeting, in every team meeting, we celebrate the colossal failure of the week. Because it's really important in a culture where meeting your OKRs and hitting those sales objectives or whatever it might be with precision, you really have to emphasize that you can't win if you don't make a mistake every once in a while. If you're always hitting your goals, that means those goals aren't high enough. So by celebrating the colossal failure of the week, that teaches us all that it's okay to fail. And it's only failure if you don't learn from it. So sharing that openly is helpful. So being more upfront about who I am as a person and not wearing a mask in the workplace, I think, is a rule we should all break.
Love that.
Good one.
Love that.
Good one.
I'll jump. Oh, no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead. No, I wanted to share with you, I think it's so important that we show up our authentic self. I once heard someone say, and probably someone knows who said it, but the best part of me is me.
Yeah.
So why don't I show up every day? And why don't I ask everyone around me to show up every day as the best part of them? So what I try to do, along the same lines of what you're talking about, is we have kind of 3 non-negotiables that we show up at work with. One, it's about learning. I don't care who the smartest person is in the room. I want us all to constantly be listening and learning from the experiences of others, for us, from our partners, from each other. That's how we grow. I always value learning, and that gives room to fail, right? We show up as a family. That means everyone has a voice in the room. That means just like in your own family, we have each other's backs. We can argue. We don't always have to. We don't always have to agree. But at the end of the day, we're a family, and we move forward together. And the last thing is integrity. The only thing that no one can take away from you, well, there's 2 things: your education and your integrity. And I really believe strongly that how you commit yourself day in, day out is something that I hope that we always continue to do. But that only comes from that vulnerability and that trust in one another. So that's how we talk about it.
I love that. Oscar Wilde says, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And I think that you have to be your authentic self because you can't make that shit up every day consistently. It just doesn't work.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder.
Holding up that mask is exhausting.
100%. Who else?
So yeah, another one is, so oftentimes when you're trying to figure out like what do you need to meet, obviously in the tech world, there's more men than women. And so they say, okay, on your team, okay, we need to make sure that we reach the industry, kind of average of 28% or whatever. That's bullshit. So basically, 50-50. There's 50 women, 50, So on my leadership team, I'm in a tech industry, but I'm proud to say that my leadership team is more than 50% women. And
I think we could go louder than that.
And you wouldn't expect that, right? So you would expect, oh, well, if you're in technology, you're looking for software, that there should be more, men than women. There's no pipeline, blah, 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 blah. But I have the most amazing women. And I didn't just look for women. I looked for the best person, and I happened to find women. And so, it's a great interaction for our team. And I think that part of the reason that I was able to do it is oftentimes when you're trying to fill a job becomes available. You look for someone to fill that role, and they'll look for someone who looks like the previous person who was there. So that's going to create a natural bias in what you're doing. But if you kind of open it up, and it's like, I need to figure out the best way to build out a developer experience team that does this, or the best way to figure out the developer ecosystem for this, you just look for the best person, and you're going to come up with something different.
I heard something good the other day. I love this. I have to share this one with you because I think that I don't even think we hire people that look like us. I think we hire people that act like us is my new twist on the thing. But when you fill the pipeline 50-50, because you get the check mark or 2 for 1 credit for filling the pipeline, it's the next level down that we've been a little off of the hiring manager. Because if we don't have a diverse hiring team, even if you show me a 50-50 pipeline, if I'm, a white or Asian man in tech, I'm going to end up with a white or Asian man in the job versus going one level down of the hiring, not just the recruiting pipeline. We forget about that next step of how to ensure that. So I like that very
the
much.
rule I've been focused on breaking, which builds there, and Shelley, a little bit off what you're talking about, is breaking the mini-me cycle in sponsorship. So sponsorship, we've been talking a lot over the last couple of years about sponsorship, mentorship in teams. Sponsorship really important, as I think everybody knows, in terms of helping build a wonderful, diverse set of leaders. And I've been challenging our teams. One is that the people that the people that you are sponsoring know that you are sponsoring them. I think that's a really important part of the conversation, is for people to recognize And I challenge each of our leaders to be clear about the 5 people that they're sponsoring, and I want at least 2 of them to look and act nothing like them. So that's our goal, at least 2, and I call them on it, and I want them, who are your 5 people? And my expectation is that a couple of them will look and act nothing like them, and then my second challenge to them is I actually go ask the people, and say, who's sponsoring you? And my expectation is the answer is obviously is the right person. Because I do believe that building teams and relationships where people understand how invested you are in their success is so important. I learned that really early in my career with a series of people that I worked for, some of whom I knew were deeply invested, and the ones that I didn't. You always have this skepticism about, do they really have my back? And so I believe in a lot of transparency in and around that as part of that balance. That's the thing I'm really trying to break the cycle of.
Love that. Trent?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything I've heard. I think there's a hidden piece in there on that path that you absolutely need to set goals, numbers, metrics to drive the change, right? That's been our biggest lesson, has been, if you don't set the target, you're not serious about it. And if you don't hold yourself accountable to it. But I think there's another layer. On the way there, hierarchy is a real problem, right?
Hierarchy?
Hierarchy. And so one of the challenges is, professional services has this in spades because, we're flat at one layer, which is partners, and it has its structure. But there's the importance of those roles really don't give people beneath the opportunity to get authentic leadership. It's still a deferral to a partner decision. I think that's one of the areas you can make immediate change is flatten your hierarchy. If you're building innovative teams and getting people together, it doesn't matter that somebody's older and more experienced and someone's younger and comes from a different perspective. Foster a culture where actually they can get to lead as peers. The conversation should absolutely be as peers. And that's how I think we fast track, particularly our younger people to get ready and be able to step up into the leadership. I think if you just do it by numbers, you also don't arm them to be great leaders either. You've got to encourage them. So I think they're the 2 parts, because the number part, it's hard to hit, and you're amazing. But honestly, it's hard to hit. It's really hard. It's a war for that talent out there. And, on the path, we looked at ours the other day and we said 40-40-20, right? 40% female, 40% male, 20% cultural diversity, diverse background. And when we actually sit back and extrapolate the numbers, we had an intervention with our, 30 of our leadership and said, if we break this down, new hires and pipeline, we're there. Great. Good tick, feel proud. But if you extrapolate out what that means as we cascade down through the existing organisation, we're not getting there till 2030. Right? You'd want to see it on your watch, wouldn't you? Making a change, but we won't actually have made that change, statistically speaking. So I think you've got to have those other interventions around, let people step up out of their comfort zone. And if they're not entirely ready, that's okay.
But do you have that now in your measurement system for accountability? Do you hold people accountable, or do you just expect diversity to happen, or do you put that in someone's review now, giving them credit for creating diverse teams?
We 100% have it in our leaders' goals. 100%. Building off of decades of experience, just a quick side story, we very focused on women for many years, just as the rule of diversity, and our CEO at the time said, we will have more diversity. And he looked up a year later and nothing had changed. And so he did 2 things. One is he set targets, and the second is he went on Good Morning America and said, we will be the most diverse professional services firm. So he both set targets and put it out there in the public domain. So we've tried to continue to use those philosophies, but 100% in our leaders' goals.
And I think something that's important there, sorry to jump in, is it's not just about, you mentioned not just from the top down, but the hiring managers. It's not just the what, but the how. So when we look at our evaluation system at Google now, it's not just about for leaders, what are your numbers, although they are tracked on that, but it's for everyone at every level. How are you contributing to Google's diversity and inclusion goals? What committees are you participating in? What are your extracurriculars, for lack of a better term? Are you participating in employee resource groups? What is your leadership in those areas? So by putting that, what gets measured gets done, and by putting that in your overall performance review, it's very clear that this is a priority, and it's not just at the top. Everyone has to participate to change the culture of a company.
I love that. I just had to share with Janet. I was actually with Barry Salzberg the day that you were hired, and we were keynote speaking together. And I came off the stage, and he told me he was going to be. I would be very proud of him that he hired his first female CEO for Deloitte. So I was there that day when he made that public announcement, and I said, "Well, did you do that to fill a quota or because you wanted to make the table better?" And he said, "Let me tell you," and he talked about his board and how he had 3 women out of 25 and the women never spoke up. And I said, "What'd you do?" He said he got rid of 5 guys, added 5 more women, 8 out of 24, 25, and all of a sudden the conversation changed completely. So I was there that day. So
The metrics and the behavior, your point is exactly
100%.
and the behavior.
Right on,
So-
right on. So let's just go very quickly. So I want to get some questions from here. In any order, tell me, what are you proud of? One of the things we talk about, the pay gap, whether it's parity or leadership or culture or education and advancement. What are things inside of your companies you're the most proud of that you're working on so that it won't take over 218 years to realize gender parity in the C-suite? Like, what's a solution? What are you proud of?
I'll happily.
Too many
No one
things.
wants to jump in.
Too many things.
I'll start with one. We're not there. We're at the 50-50 mark, but the openness of the conversation inside the workplace. It's not the the elephant in the room, and let's not talk about diversity. It's an open conversation. Why I say it's 50-50 is there is still some laggard behaviour in people saying, well, you've got to meet the stats. It's about the stats, and that's not owning the opportunity. That's making an excuse for why we're not there. So I think the fact that it's an open conversation now, it allows people to sort of really challenge each other in that forum. And if you don't do that, I think the problem is that the danger lurks in the background. It's the innuendo and the conversations. The culture doesn't really break free and get to where it could be. So I think that's the area we'd be proud of.
For me, I'm proud of the new level of transparency that we have at Google in terms of our diversity reporting. For years, we've reported our numbers by gender and by racial or ethnic background. This year, we reported attrition. And that's critically important because as a marketer, I always know you can bring as many people you want into the funnel, but if it's leaking and they're going right out, you're still not meeting your product goals. And it's the same thing here. And I was proud that the company put out numbers that did not look good. And this is public information. If you look at an index, like we are losing Black Googlers at 127% index of the norm. Latino Googlers at 108. And the people who are having the most difficult time at Google right now are people like me, are Black women. So the fact that we were open, we were public, not just with our employees, but with the world, and are taking really strong efforts to not just focus on retention, but building communities amongst this population and making sure that everyone, regardless of their background, can feel comfortable working at Google, I think is an amazing thing.
Wonderful.
I really like what you said. At Google, I think we're owning it, and we're asking the questions, the hard questions. It's not just about numbers, but it's the next conversation you have. It's listening. It's understanding how to break that down, and what do we need to do to change? How do we make it more inclusive? How do we find power in our diversity? We're such a fortunate company that it's cool to work at Google, and a lot of people want to come, but we have to nourish that. And that's what I'm so proud about, is that it is an active, very vibrant conversation right now. And that we have the opportunity. I can raise my hand. For example, I said, I can't sit on a stool here, right? And I went to some of the Googlers and I said, because I still have sensory paralysis, I need short chairs. I have a voice. I can say that. I didn't have to apologize. So all of you guys are in short chairs because of me. But
Thank you. We like that.
Thank you.
Turned on great either,
I know,
by
I
the way.
know.
So we're working on that in our
reason.
organization
yeah.
too.
But what I love is that it's active conversation and we're exploring it. We're trying to understand it, and it's not just about the numbers.
Yeah, I love how Cisco supports families and supports kind of mothers and fathers. So we have a Cisco daycare, and I commute in with my daughter, drop her off. We commute home at the end of the day. That's all great. We use our video conferencing technology so that we can all kind of work from anywhere. Actually, so I'm proud of my team. When I had my maternity leave, my team all teamed up so that they didn't bring anything to me during my maternity leave. So they came in, they filled every gap, they did everything, they stepped up to all those roles, and I actually had the first leave of my entire life.
Thank you, team.
During those 3 months. So they were amazing, but it's just kind of that, just the fact that Cisco overall supports this, but then just people team up together to help each other make that happen.
Can I add one more thing? I just think it's so important for us all to be courageous. If we expect for this diversity and this change to happen, we all have to step forward. We all have to take perhaps what feels like a little bit of a risk. I realized at my previous company, I never shared my story ever before, and I got to Google, and all of a sudden I had permission, and I felt empowered with it.
Yeah.
But what's amazing is how many other people have approached me, and they've felt empowered by it. So I think it just takes a little bit of courage in all of us to be open to that. And then the next person approaches you, and the next, and that's how the conversation changes. Yes. That's how the DNA changes. So we have to step outside of what feels safe.
Who feels bold and brave in this audience? Raise your hands high.
Wow.
Come on, step it up.
Yeah.
Who was going to add something?
I was
Janet?
just going to add my proud moment. Do you want me to do that?
I
You want to go to the
absolutely
audience?
No.
We're going to get the audience
quickly,
involved in a minute.
So quickly, we've really shifted the conversation in and around unconscious bias across the organization, and it's really hard. So I loved your commentary around doing things that feel really hard. Opening up around unconscious bias is a very difficult series of conversations, and we've invested in driving that through our entire practice. And it is probably the most uncomfortable thing that we've done, because it really is about looking at yourself in the mirror. And even those of us that feel that we set the gold standard have learned a lot about ourselves in that process. So that's the thing that I'm really energized about and also really proud of.
I think we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable today. And I think that's the only way we'll grow and stretch, and being bold and brave at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think once we identify the problems, it's no longer unconscious. So we have to start admitting that it's quite conscious if we're still
Exactly.
making these errors.